Well, good evening to all our diamond dudes and dolls out there, and welcome to another episode. We're back, the Baseball Bums. I am Benny Scala, aka The Player. Now, you may know me from that hit adult film, He Rose to the Occasion. And if we are bums, well, then I am joined by my fellow Messiah of Mendicants. That's a keeper. The iconic Jimmy Farrow. Jimmy, if Hubert H. Humphrey was here, and he was the original Triple H, he would say that he is pleased as punch that the bums are back in town. What do you say?
What do I say? I say it's the first time I ever thought about Hubert H. Humphrey as the original Triple H. Oy,
Yeah,
wow. We went from a porn reference to you speaking with the Messiah, so I'm very, very confused now.
yeah. I'm
But it's
all
nice
over
to
the
be
place.
back with the baseball bums, that's for sure.
Oh yeah. I've waited a long time for this. That's what she
Yeah.
said. But so Jimmy, on our
All
previous
right.
episodes, we focused on old school baseball, but we're going to change it up a little bit and talk about the current state of our national pastime. And you know that might be a great way to start this off. So we're recording this on opening day, March 27th. The LA Dodgers and Chicago Cubs, they already played a 2-game series in Tokyo on March 18th and 19th. So what do you think of America's pastime starting somewhere other than America? And you know, do we really need to start the season the last week of March?
I don't mind starting the first week of the season, the last week of March. I don't mind that. As far as the doing the Japan thing, look, it on a business level is it's not the baseball we grew up with. It doesn't operate the same way. Uh, who's the biggest star in the majors, please?
Yeah, I mean, Shohei Ohtani, right, or Judge?
Okay,
I mean,
so what you're doing is for a couple of games, you're going over there and you're making that market count, and you're hammering home Major League Baseball's brand to the Japanese culture. Uh, Makes perfect sense to me. It's like us as wrestling fans when WWE goes to Saudi Arabia or goes anywhere else overseas. It's to globalize the brand. So listen, just as I have a problem with some of the hardcore professional wrestling guys, wrestling is my dirty little secret. Sure, America's national pastime is baseball, but am I surprised by the fact that they would do something like, capitalize on Otani's popularity and want to spread the brand to another country, for God's sakes? No, I don't begrudge that. I got no problem with that.
well, and I guess if it is going to be any other country, I mean, Japan has earned that right. I mean, how many years did the Yankees in the off season? You know, they did a lot of barnstorming in Japan right after the season.
To me, the most valid league in the history of professional baseball after the major leagues, of course, is Japan. They're the most well documented, most well run machine. It was built in the image of American baseball. You have had great legends over there. Sadahara O. Matsui had hit 300 something home runs before he came to the Yankees and had an incredible Yankee career. Japan's always had excellent players and an excellent level of ability. I think the ball is smaller. Wasn't that the complaint, Benny, about the difference, the big physical difference between Japanese baseball and American
I didn't even
baseball?
know it was any difference.
I remember hearing that the ball was a little smaller and a little more tightly wound, and that's why Sadahara O was able to hit it. You know what, Sadahara O, with that batting stance, you hit that many home runs. His foot, for God's sakes, was off the ground when he would start.
I kind of
Remember,
like that swing. Yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was almost like Machio when he goes to like this and gets up on one
the
foot.
the
It's like
crane kick. Yeah,
wow. Yeah, he had some timing.
there was I believe I could be wrong. Mel Ott, you know, the great New York Giant, who was like all of like 5'7" and hit what 511 home runs.
That is
I think
dead
he did
accurate.
something very similar with the
Yep,
leg kick.
yep, very cool.
Yeah,
We don't see too many of those. We don't see
no,
too many of
absolutely
those.
not. So, Jimmy, before we get into the balls and strikes,
Hmm.
I heard on Sirius XM that Forbes recently released valuations of every MLB league or every MLB team rather, and of
Right.
course our Yankees were number one at 8.2 billion. So,
Mm.
how smart was George Steinbrenner when he bought the Yankees for $10 million in 1973 from CBS?
I remember when it happened. I was driving in the car with my father, and we were listening to the radio, and the report had come in that a shipbuilder from Cleveland was buying the New York Yankees, and my father turned to me. I was just a little kid at the time, and he was like, "Thank God." And I said, "Why?" And he said that CBS had destroyed the Yankees, and we need help. And he said anybody would have been welcome. We could never have foresaw that we were getting George Steinbrenner. We didn't know who he really was. We were just happy
Yeah, he
in
was
my
a chip holder,
household that
right, from Cleveland.
yeah, we were just happy in my household that someone had rescued them from CBS, because CBS destroyed the Yankees when they bought the
The
Yankees.
Mike Burke era, right? Was that
Yeah,
it?
when they bought the Yankees when you were a kid, right, in the early '60s, and they held
65,
it
I
for
think. Yeah,
yeah, and they were horrible. They were
that was
horrible.
the dark ages of the Yankees.
Right, right. And when George came around, George was Vince McMahon before Vince McMahon and before others, like very few others, by the way, when you start to think about it. But getting back to George, George was a risk taker, and George always made it clear, I love the fans. I love my team. I want the fans to get the best product, the best, the best, the best. And he spent, and what he grew the Yankees into is just like what Vince McMahon grew the WWF and then the WWE into. He took it from good beginnings and just made it something business wise bigger than it had ever been. And what was the profit there? How much did George pay in the end of the day
Well,
for the Yankees?
he paid the investment group paid 10 million.
Right.
His
1973.
share of it was
73.
$168,000.
$168,000 was his share of the initial investment in the New York Yankees that he was to become and build to the point of world global recognition, correct?
Right. And
That's
when he
insane.
passed away, I think he owned 57%.
That's insane. That's it.
Yep.
That's an almost insurmountable. Who can rival that? That's the real question. Who else has done something like that?
Yeah. Hang
You
on one
know,
second, my friend. I got somebody at my door here.
at your door. We're live on TV. Is the dog breaking in? The dog might be breaking in.
Not the pup wants to be
I
on the
knew it.
air.
I knew it. I knew it was the dog. I
This
had
is
a feeling.
Bree. Usually she
Okay.
appears on True Crime, but that's a good girl.
Okay. Okay.
But
Well, she heard the baseball bums are back. She's
yeah,
excited.
she did. The bums are back in town. Good girl.
Nice.
So I want to hopefully you can see this, and I think I can blow it up a little bit. But
All right.
I always said that Steinbrenner and Vince McMahon were the two like biggest I guess what do you want to say tycoons? As far as parlaying a relatively small investment
Right.
into a kabillion dollars. And then
Right.
you reminded me of Jerry Jones. So as somebody else, but let me see if I can do this here. All right. So yeah, 73 Steinbrenner controls an investment group that buys the Yankees for 10 million. Steinbrenner's actual investment is $168,000. And when he died in 2010, he increased the share up to 57%. In other words, so I mean 168,000, and now like I would think Hal is probably his equity is probably like maybe 5 billion. Not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
Not too
Mm-hmm.
bad.
No.
82, Vince Jr. buys the WWF from his father, Vince Sr., for $1 million, paid in 4 quarterly installments of $250,000 each, $250,000. And the contract, I believe, that it stipulated that the ownership would revert back to Sr. if Jr. defaulted on any of the payments. And the last I saw, Forbes had the WWE valued at $9 billion. And then, not to be slighted, Jerry Jones, he bought the Dallas Cowboys in 1989 for $140 million. And this included the team, the
Mm-hmm.
stadium, and
Nice. He bought
right down
everything.
to the locker room there.
He bought everything. Right.
Everything. And they're valued at $10 billion.
Okay, so let's hammer this home because I find this incredible. America's national pastime. The Yankees, $8.2 billion. Vince McMahon's WWE built vision is $9 billion. It is more than Babe Ruth's foundation. Do you realize how bizarre I find this to be? This is
I did a double take when I saw that. I thought like, no, that
but
can't
but
be
here's
right.
the real kicker. Here's the real kicker, because we all know at the end of the day, and for sure in America, that the most watched thing is the Super Bowl. And lo and behold, who was worth more than the WWE? Who was worth more than the New York Yankees?
America's team, the Dallas
Jerry
Cowboys.
Jones's Dallas Cowboys, because football is king nowadays, right, Benny?
Oh yeah,
Football, football is
apparently, yeah.
king. Well, oddly enough, being a baseball show, but the truth be told, it says it right here. You know, so all
But
three of these guys took something that was definitely something to work with. Let's not be clueless here. You got the Yankees, you got their history. So George is, not just buying the team; he's buying the history. That's why the Yankees are worth what they're worth. And I'm sure at the time, even though 10 million doesn't seem like much, it was probably a lot more that you'd have to spend if you were buying the Milwaukee Brewers. You know what I'm saying?
right. But I
So
mean, and to give George the credit that he deserves, it wasn't like he bought the team just to milk a profit out of it. I mean, he spent the
no,
money that
no.
because he wanted a winner,
He
and and
also
and, and, and by providing a winner, the team was worth more. So it was a win-win.
he also had the ability to step outside the box. George was a risk taker. Okay, it took a lot of balls after you're buying the team to renovate the stadium. That was a big deal, Benny. Your Yankee Stadium that you grew up with was changed. It
Right.
was physically changed, and George made that decision. That's a big decision. And then he simultaneously put the captaincy on Munson, the first captain since Lou Gehrig after Lou Gehrig had passed. There had never been a captain during all those championships that followed. That's kind of bizarre, but it's true. And George took the chance to put the captaincy on Munson. He did a lot of things. He brought Reggie here. He laughed at Gabe Paul, his top advisor, when he said go get Joe Rudy. Billy Martin wanted Joe Rudy. George was like, Joe Rudy, Joe Rudy, Joe Rudy doesn't put fannies in seats.
Right.
Get me Reggie. I want Reggie. Second, Billy walked out of the room. He was like, turned right to Gabe Paul. Get on the phone with Reggie's agent. You know,
But
George
yeah,
is a
the
risk
man, the
risk
man was
taker.
not
Jerry
afraid of
Jones
spending
gets
money.
murdered. I got to get this out of the way. Jerry Jones gets murdered, and I get it. You're tired of him. Blah 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 blah. We're Jet fans, right, Benny? We're Jet fans.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
through and
When I
through.
look at Jerry Jones, and I guess you got to be old enough to appreciate it. Let me put it this way: if I had always been a Dallas Cowboy fan, I'd be pretty happy at the end of the day with Jerry Jones. Yeah, I'd be probably frustrated too. I get it, but if I was a Dallas Cowboy fan, bro, those '90s Cowboys were just unbelievable. And if you want to say what have you done for me lately as a Jet fan, before last year with Dallas, I think the previous 3 years were like 12-win seasons for the Cowboys.
Yeah.
So to say that Jerry Jones is completely clueless when a team 3 of the last 4 years was giving you 11 to 12 wins or whatever they were doing and making the playoffs, yeah, we know about the playoffs. I'd love to make the playoffs just once,
I
right?
mean, how
You know,
happy
I,
would we be as Jets fans if they won 12
I
games once? I mean,
I mean, if Jerry Jones had taken over the Jets all those years ago and given us 3 Super Bowl championships to add to Namath's crown, and yeah, he's still around, and was suffering through 12-win seasons, then I would hate to say this, but part of us would be spoiled. Is that the
do you,
charge that I'm pressing against those who completely go over the top against Jerry Jones or Dak Prescott or before him Tony Romo? I mean, could you imagine having Tony Romo as a quarterback? I can't because I've had Ryan Fitzpatrick and Zach Wilson and Sam Darnold and this guy and that guy and Mark Sanchez running into people's asses. It's just
forgot about that.
what have I had? What have I had? I had Vinny Testaverde catch lightning in a bottle in 1998, right? It was nice. It was a close call. We almost made it, but we're the Jets. Chad Pennington had hope, but he had a fragile eggshell body. So much for him. We've never seen great quarterbacking. We've been tortured.
Yeah.
We've basically been tortured. So when I watch Tony Romo's career or I watch Dak Prescott, I'm like, geez, I wouldn't mind having this guy every year. Oh, you don't understand. I don't understand what. I'd love to understand 12 wins in a playoff berth.
Do you think, Jimmy, if Steinbrenner was still around, that we'd still be stuck at 27?
No, no, I don't.
Would he have tolerated all these years without a win? I can't
No,
imagine.
I know for sure that Cashman would have been gone. Hal, for some reason, I don't know if like he looks at Cashman like an uncle or something like that. As far as his dynamic with him as a person, it's got to be pretty deep. He obviously adores Cashman. George would have been at the end of the day. I feel like in 2015 or so, because George was more patient later on. He was. I think he would have been more patient. I think around 2014, 2015, he would have fired Cashman, and who knows what would have followed. But George would not have Let's not forget, though, there was 18 years between 78 and 96 before championships were won. George did not always make the right move,
True. Yeah, good
So,
point. Good point.
who knows? He would always give you a quality team, though. We wouldn't have to worry about that. The
Well,
80s
and
Yankees
we've had
never
that.
won a
I mean,
title,
we've
but
had that
they,
every year too. I mean,
yeah, we do get that every year. We got, like last year, I wasn't expecting anything from the Yankees, and they got to the World Series. So what
I
do I
mean,
know?
I was disappointed how they performed in the series, but I was ecstatic they got there.
Yeah, yeah. It was the weirdest team I've seen get to the championship with as a Yankee fan.
Of all, yeah, of all the Yankee teams.
I've
So
been watching for over 50 years, and that team had the weirdest. I was like, man, this team. But baseball's changed. I don't. The batting averages are so abysmal, and I was like, ugh. It
yeah,
was, somebody had said that last year's Yankees were like basically two guys. Who was that said that, by the way? Somebody said that on another team that might have used to play for us. Anyway, I think it was Severino. He said something like that as a Met last year, where he was like,
okay,
they got two guys in the lineup and nobody else. And you know what? For most of the season, he might have been right about that because you look at the batting averages, they're so abysmal. And outside of Soho and Judge, you couldn't really transplant those stats back in the day
true, true.
for the rest of them. So,
Good point. So speaking of the Yankees,
yeah.
I'm thinking they should be called the Yank Me's because every time we turn around, somebody's pulling something. So Cole's gone for the year. Luis Gil is out for 3 months. I bet he's out for the season. Giancarlo Stanton is on the IL with a yeast infection. Actually,
Is that what it is?
no,
Live
he's got
reaction,
no, he's got
folks.
elbow
Not
tendonitis,
live
but
fans.
I think he's also got a yeast infection. But and
Yeast infection.
who knows when he comes?
Wow.
DJ LeMahieu is out until
Oh,
May.
forget
Clark
him.
Schmidt, one
Forget
of our
him.
starters, is going to miss a little bit of time. I mean,
That's
can we
unfortunate.
still compete?
Um, yeah. Oddly enough, in today's landscape, it goes back to what I said. The American League, being perceived as weaker. Well, sometimes that's not how it works out in the World Series. It did last year, but it's a strange lineup. I find it hard to fall in love with the Yankees as far as their lineup. I'm pretty happy. This is opening day, as you mentioned, Benny, and the Yankees have played their first game. And the very odd choice of having Austin Wells lead off, which I thought was a very bizarre choice,
Yeah,
actually paid off today because Austin Wells did something that only 21 catchers have ever done in when did baseball start? 1883 officially or something like that.
something like that.
Yeah, it's only been like 21 times since this has happened, and it's the first Yankee catcher to ever lead off with a home run in the history
Yeah.
of Major League Baseball.
Good,
So,
good start. We had a couple of home runs. Judge doubled in a run.
yeah,
Rodon pitched very well. The middle
right,
relievers pitched great. Yeah, the
right,
closer got touched up a little bit, but
right.
he closed the game out.
Getting back to your can we compete? I always look at it first with the pitching, obviously. I did not personally like the phasing out of Marcus Stroman last year. I don't know how you feel about him, and I know it seems to be fashionable for people to bash on him. I don't agree. I think Marcus Stroman is just a very emotional guy, and I kind of like that. Every locker room should have one. Okay, I don't think he's disruptive. I haven't caught anything disruptive about him, with his teammates
No,
or
not at all.
anything.
He's a
So I
competitor.
I didn't understand it because I feel like you can at least pencil him in every year from somewhere between 12 to 15 wins if he's having a good year, and you keep going with him. Like last year they kind of pulled the plug on him and he had 10 wins. I'm like, leave him alone. Let him go to crunch time. Let him be part of the rotation. Instead, we're looking at Cortez, right? And how long had it been since he'd thrown a pitch, Benny?
I don't know. It's quite a while, and it'll be quite a while
We're,
before he
we're
throws
looking at
another one.
we're looking at situations like that, and I'm like, you phased out a guy like Stroman, who for years he was signed for a reason. You know why? Because he's pretty reliable. Right? Wasn't that the reason he was signed?
I mean, not that
You
they
know,
pitched the 250 innings. You can't really call him an innings eater anymore, but his job was to pitch into the maybe fifth or sixth inning and keep
right?
him in the ball game. And I think he was very
I
good at that.
I thought he was doing that. He was actually not doing it as well as he's done in the past, but he's still very serviceable. There's that term. You
No, but
know,
this that it fits this time.
it does fit, and that's why to me, when you look at the three starters, the three main starters that they have right now, there's a shot if things go right with the order and the team gels and stuff. You got a closer that I do believe in right now. You finally got a closer that I think can get the job truly done the way a closer's. Boy, he's going to make you nervous. Look, nobody's Mariano. For those people who are waiting for another Mariano, good
He's not
luck.
walking through the door.
No, you'll be pushing up daisies. Don't wait for that. But
Right.
it is reasonable in today's landscape to look for a Goose Gossage or something like him. And not to insult Goose, because Goose is going to go 3 innings. Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Gossage. I hear him loud and clear. But it's not unreasonable to find somebody who's at least can do that. Goose used to make us nervous. Let's be honest.
Yeah, he wasn't. I mean, his control was not pinpoint.
Right, and I like this closer. I think that today he had a little shaky day, but I chalked it up to emotion. I think he was probably like really wanted to do well and probably threw a little too hard or whatever. But he'll find his groove.
First day
He
on the
will.
job. We're all we're all a little
Yeah,
nervous our first day on the
yeah,
job.
and he got the save at the end of the day. Who cares?
Right.
He got the job done. When Gossage, it was 5-2, wasn't it? When Gossage came into the 78 game, if I'm not mistaken, and it was five
Yeah.
four by the time the game was over. So sometimes closers make you nervous. Move on.
But you win, I mean,
Yeah. You get it done,
most
you get it done.
spoiled us, but how many? There was one Mo in our lifetime,
Right.
and that's going to be it.
Yep.
I don't think we'll live long enough to see another Mo.
No. Mariano is the one of a kind, really. There really is nobody else in that room.
Yeah,
That's just the way it goes for now, unless somebody comes
he's a
along.
Messier or a Gretzky, right? I mean, like that level.
Well, you know what? As for what he did in his sport at his position, he's probably greater, if that makes any sense. Because there's no one else in the room. When you mention Gretzky or Messier, you can bring up Maurice the Rocket Richard. You could bring up other names. You can. Jaromir Jagr, Mario Lemieux. You can bring those names up.
Yeah.
When you bring up Mariano, who else are you bringing up?
I mean, like a Trevor Hoffman's a very, very close.
He's
not
the
close.
only one.
Very distant second. Yeah.
He's the only one I thought of, and we pounded him, didn't we? Didn't we?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
We pounded
Yep.
him. So I mean, and he was great. To me, he's the next one. So that's got to count for massive respect. But Mariano, only one.
I mean, you're
Only
picking
one.
sides on the Sandlot, and Mo and Trevor Hoffman are the two guys left.
You
better pick Mo 1,000 times out of 1,000.
You better pick Rivera. And it's funny too when you look at the beginning of his career when he was a starter in his first rookie season. You don't see that.
He was shaky.
You see like this skinny little kid. I mean, something miraculously happened to him within a year.
The only blemish on his stats
was moving him to the bullpen. It was a brilliant decision to move him to the bullpen. Right. He was once in a lifetime kind of closer. We won't see something like him again.
No, but I'm blessed that we saw him. So how about this guy?
Wow.
Juan Soto. So turns down. We offered him 16 years at $760, and he goes to sign with the Mets for 15 years for $765. I mean, is that pure greed, Jimmy?
Yeah. At the end of the day, I mean, it is to me. He can sell it any way he wants it. Listen, he's the winner here. We're just talking about him. So he wins one way or the other. So he can smirk all he wants and stuff and try to get cute about his answers and his reasoning. He wanted to be the big man on campus, and he got the big money. That's end of story. I agree with Aaron Boone. He looks terrible in that uniform. Absolutely terrible. I'm laughing at the Met fans that think that automatically this is going to make them World Series bound or that he's going to be the reason they get there. At the end of the day, the Mets had a great run last year, but until further notice, I feel like, and we witnessed it personally, and so did they. All doors go through Los Angeles now.
Right.
Right now, it's the Dodgers.
I mean, do you have a better chance of being in a World Series in a Yankee uniform or a Met uniform? To me, it's a no-brainer. That part of it's a no-brainer.
Well, if you put it that way, then yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Soto was beloved as a Yankee, played great as a Yankee. Him and Judge made an incredible combo, and it's really a shame that we couldn't keep them together. But it's on him. I don't feel like the Yankees shortchanged him. I don't feel like the Yankees weren't in it and gave him a serious offer. They gave him a great offer.
$750 million.
You want to stay here for the next decade and a half and play with Aaron and get paid immensely. I'm sure at some point you're going to deliver a world title. Say what you want about A-Rod. He was here 13 years. They got a world title. I don't want to hear it. It's the last world title we've had. Stay here. It'll work out. Nobody expects what happened in the late 90s. Anybody who does is a fool. Because I remember when the late 90s were happening, I knew that right then and there, we weren't going to see that for a very long time, if ever again in our lifetime. Because the previous time the Yankees won 4 out of 5 World Series was in the 50s. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah, 49
It's a
through
long
53.
time
Yes.
between. It's 40 plus years. I remember telling my dad, you better enjoy this because you got to see it twice in your lifetime. He saw it as a
Yeah.
kid in the 50s, and he was getting to see it again. And I was thrilled because I had never seen it, and I was like, wow. So this is what it felt like for Dad back in the day. We win. Jeter, Williams, O'Neill, Mo. We win. That does not happen. We were blessed. That stuff doesn't happen. But right now, all doors go through Los Angeles.
Right.
There could be
And
another
doesn't
title in them burning hills, unfortunately, for the people.
doesn't isn't Soto better off from a team perspective playing with the
Yeah.
Yankees because with the Mets they can pitch around him because there's nobody else remotely in his class. Maybe Alonso as far as a power hitter, but
what I don't get, I don't understand how anybody, especially when the numbers are like that, and you've already had success in a Yankee uniform, why would you ever, for your own personal brand, they always say that the players themselves now are a personal brand. Why would you want to leave the Yankees? What is wrong with you? You just got to a World Series. It's not like it didn't work. It did work. It did work.
and they
He,
offered
I,
you enough
he,
money for the next 50 generations of Sotos.
I just think that it has to come down to ego and greed. I'm sorry, but at the end of the day, when you go for the extra 5 million and you're going to be the guy over there, now you're really too concerned about your brand. If you had sacrificed a little bit and stayed with the Yankees and you're able to win world championships, with Judge, or even one championship with Judge, you are going to wind up with a plaque in Yankee Stadium. You give us a decade or so of productivity, right, Ben?
I
You
mean,
know,
doesn't he make that money up in endorsements anyway, playing for the Yankees? I mean, I don't get any of this.
I mean, shouldn't it matter that every minor league kid or every high school ball player who goes to college or gets into the minors, every kid's dream is just to wear the pinstripes? I don't want to hear it.
You
We're
don't
not
want to
off
have
the
number
mountain. We're
22
not off the
retired.
mountaintop.
You don't
We're
want
not
your
off the
clock out
mountaintop. What
center
did you just
field. I
say
mean,
they're worth?
I don't get it.
What did you just say they were worth? We're not off the mountaintop. We're the Dallas Cowboys of the MLB.
8.2 billion.
Right. We're the Dallas Cowboys of Major League Baseball. We're the Manchester United of English football. We're not off the top of the mountain. No one's going to knock us off the top of the mountain. You can't erase history, although people are trying.
Right.
But you can't erase history. And yeah, it's been a long wait. I've waited longer. How about them apples? I'm in my 50s, and I've seen 7 world championships from the Yankees. It's more than any other team has won in my lifetime. I've been around almost 6 decades now. I'm almost, unfortunately, it's the numbers going up, Benny, all right? But 7 championships, it's still more than any other team in my lifetime.
Oh yeah.
Pretty good. I'm satisfied. I'm sorry I have to wait a little
Now,
while. It'll happen again.
what year were you born?
67. So you're
All
talking
right.
about
So
when Reggie's there. My father's taking me. I'm watching Reggie and Thurman and Guidry. I went to all those games. My father used to take me all the time to the 70s, the Bronx Zoo, bro. I saw it, just like you did. And it was incredible. It was incredible. Into the 80s, the Bronx really turned into a shithole. We had an incident in the parking lot. George Steinbrenner sent us free tickets because my father wrote them. Remember when it
yeah.
was dangerous to go to Yankee Stadium?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at. We had an incident in the parking lot. We're trying to get back to our car, and then these guys were like coming over, like looking for change, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I'm just a kid. I was like, Dad, we better get in the damn car and get the hell out of here. It was a close call.
I was trying to do the calculation while you were talking. I think being born in 1955, I think 11 championships for me. Nobody's remotely close to that.
Right. Exactly. No.
And even if you use the line of demarcation, free agency in 1974,
Yeah.
we still have more than anybody else.
Right. No, we do.
Any way you slice it or dice it, we are
right.
we're superior.
And in my lifetime, they all occurred under George. And in your lifetime, you got to. I mean, Mickey Mantle's part of those championships during your lifetime, so that's
Absolutely.
fucking amazing,
Yes.
amazing.
Sadly, the year I was born was the only year that the Brooklyn Dodgers won the series.
Right.
But
And
we
two
we
years
rebounded the
and
next year.
and 2 years later, Robert Moses got away with the fact that he was the ultimate villain and all that when they went to San Francisco and Los Angeles,
Yeah,
respectively.
unreal,
You know.
unreal at that. It's hard to believe that we had three thriving teams in
Yeah.
New York.
Oh yeah. Yeah. With fan bases for decades. The Giants and the Dodgers
Oh
were
yeah,
around for
each
like
with their
75 years, each of them in New York.
loyal, diehard fans. All right,
Terrible.
Jimmy. So,
Yeah.
um, I get so tired of being on social media and seeing a comparison between these two guys. Is it justified? To me, it's an insult.
I agree. Uh, it's so blown over the top, the comparisons. I don't really understand how they're even in the same conversation. Just because he's the first guy, for the most part, since Babe to get notoriety to do something like this, he's not come close to being the kind of hitter for Babe. You could say what you want. It was Babe's time. They played differently. Blah 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 blah. No, no. Babe was the greatest of his time, and the reason why we play baseball today is because of Babe. He was the reason why baseball became America's national pastime. He was a huge star, and there was no such thing as that before Babe Ruth. He hit more home runs than the entire league
Right.
combined.
He out homered every team in baseball.
A team,
Yeah, every
team.
team, not every player,
You
every
want to
team.
you want to prorate what Otani would have to hit in a season for me?
He needs to hit like 183 home runs.
That's what I'm getting at. Babe Ruth was that great and that groundbreaking. We talk about Michael Jordan. At least Michael Jordan had something to work with when he became the legend in basketball. What was Babe Ruth building off of through the media? Not, he was it. He was it. He's their Hulk Hogan. How about them apples? We always talk wrestling. He's their Hulk Hogan. Babe Ruth, what he did.
And
And
the naysayers who discount, well, he only played day games and he didn't play against, black pitchers and whatever they want to say. Number one, the guy was playing. I mean, those train rides could not have been very pleasant. Number
Oh,
one,
the traveling schedule is no comparison. Let's
it
not
was,
even
yeah,
waste
you're taking a
oxygen.
train from New York to St. Louis. That could not have been
Stop.
pleasant.
So what
You know,
about the actual uniforms themselves? The heavy wool? You ever wear wool in August?
Well, and they didn't have the nutritional knowledge that we have now, or the training knowledge. And I mean, Babe
Right.
Ruth didn't know. He just got up and he hit home runs. You know what I mean? Like,
Not to mention also as a pitcher, there's no comparison to me. Root's
right?
Root's dominance as a pitcher. He won multiple world championships as a pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. If there had been such thing as a Cy Young Award, he would have been winning them. You
Yeah.
know, he was
That
that
one season
great.
he was what 24-4, I think,
Yeah,
with like a 1.76 ERA, something like
yeah.
that.
He was untouchable, and he was
With
untouchable in
with
the
8 or 9 shutouts.
in the championships too. In the postseason, he was untouchable. And just for shits and giggles with the Yankees, he got 5 starts. He won all 5 of them. They
Right.
seldom asked him to pitch. They didn't bring him there for that. They brought him there to be a full-time Babe Ruth. Go hit the ball a mile. But the pitching, they asked him 5 times over the course of his 15-year career with them. Could you
Yeah.
want to
5 starts,
pitch? Yeah,
5 wins. But
you want to pitch
again, to
today,
the
Babe? Yeah, I
naysayers,
remember. I remember. I remember how to do this. Yeah, okay, I'll pitch.
yeah,
Win.
what the hell? Yeah, it'd be fun. But I
Right.
mean, if it was so easy in Root's time, why did nobody else do it?
Nobody else did it because nobody else could.
Right.
The ones that tried to do it, there were very few and far between. Lou Gehrig was a freak of nature too, and he was doing it simultaneously. Lou Gehrig was just as impressive as Babe Ruth, but not statistically, but damn close. There were a few. Jimmy Fox was an early one. There were certain guys that were like, oh
Hank
shit. But
Greenberg, another one.
Hank Greenberg, yep, yep. There were certain guys, but not too many. And Babe Ruth was obviously the barometer. He's more than the Barry Bonds of his time. You got the traveling schedule. You got Babe Ruth didn't lift weights. Babe Ruth was a big guy who smoked and ate hot dogs for
Ate
God's
hot
sakes
dogs,
and drank
drank beer, right?
drank beer. But you know what? It was grown men. I don't want to hear how much we've progressed as an evolution. Bullshit. It was grown men playing against grown men. Okay, that threw very hard and hit the ball very far if they were great enough. And Babe Ruth was way beyond greater than the whole collective unit of the entire MLB. He's hitting more home runs than every single team combined. What is
Right.
that?
Yeah.
That's called writing the book for power hitting. And it simultaneously, and it's oddly enough, the boom of the steroid home run thing between Sosa and McGuire that saved baseball, as they say. Babe Ruth built baseball on the home run. So without Babe Ruth, there's nothing.
No, I
Uh,
mean,
Otani is no Ruth. This is just like you said. It's an insult. Is Otani very special? Yes. Is
yeah.
he very impressive? Yeah, he's very impressive. But Babe Ruth, get out of here. Get out of here. No way. Never will
It,
be. Not even close.
no, no. I mean, Ruth dominated the game like nobody ever has, nor any nobody ever will. It's not even to me. It's not even close.
No, and the batting average cinches it too. What was Ruth? 340, 342
Three
for his
forty
career?
two lifetime average.
340, 342. Garrick was 340, correct? I
Correct.
did good Lord. I mean, talk about King Kong and Godzilla back to back. And a belly
And
to
I mean,
belly.
you look at some of
You
those
know?
seasons that Ruth. I mean, yeah, Otani had a great season last year, but
Right.
Ruth was hitting 58 homers, driving in 170 runs,
Right.
hitting 380. Like these are ungodly numbers.
They were. They were. And people like, laugh at his swing and his stance and all this other stuff. Look, we've seen plenty of quirky stances in our time too. Look at Vladimir Guerrero, case closed. Like some of the pitches he would hit. Are you kidding me? What the hell's going on here? Some guys are good at some things and some guys are good at other things. And the most important thing in baseball is can you hit a home run? You know,
Right.
that's the bottom line. And the book was written by George Herman Ruth. The end.
Absolutely. No brainer. No brainer. All right. So my local team here, where are we
Mm.
here? The Tampa Bay Rays. They're going to be playing their entire season this year at Steinbrenner Field, which is on the left here, sharing the with the Yankees Florida State League team, the Tampa Tarpons. I always say Tampa Tampons, but they're they're the capacity of now Steinbrenner is a beautiful stadium. I do not want to discount. I love going to see games at Steinbrenner Field, but the capacity is I think 11,026. So if every game sells out, the Rays are going to draw about 900,000 people, and that's about
Right.
a 500,000 less than they drew last year. They drew I think 1.4 million. I don't know how they even drew that, but and to me right now there is no plan. You see on the right what's left of the Trop. There's
Mm.
no concrete plan or timeline to to reconstruct it to where they can play again. I've long said that the Rays are going to wind up somewhere else. I'm gonna say Montreal. I think we're going to lose the team here.
I agree that, and it makes sense that Tampa Bay would move. It would. There really is nowhere to go, and the fan base and the team's history. There's not enough of a leg to stand on. The big question is, and yes, romantically speaking, to go to Montreal would be unbelievable. But do you really think that it would be a long-term gratification? Would they be able to consistently draw in Montreal regardless? How long would that last if they did? They left because nobody was going. Let's, for the most part, right, over the years.
I'm trying to think when they left. They went to
Now,
Washington, right?
yeah,
Trying to think what year
sadly,
that was.
for the most part in the Expos history, the attendance was never there. They didn't care. It's Canadians' land. They root for the Montreal Canadiens. Baseball never truly took off there attendance wise. Let's be real. They had some special teams here and there, but did the Expos ever get anywhere? They're lovable, but they're almost like lovable losers.
Yeah,
To be
kind of
honest,
like the early Mets,
yeah, something like that.
the
They had a
amazing
few
Mets
good.
who really weren't amazing, but
Yeah, I mean, while on the surface, it would be nice if they gave it another shot in Montreal. I just wonder if it would work long term.
well,
Where else
it
could
won't
they
be
go?
Vegas though, right? Because
I don't know about Vegas. I You know, it's funny. I love the stadium that the Raiders have. To me, it looks awesome. But there's something about the Las Vegas Raiders. I can't embrace it, and I don't know. What are you going to call them over there? You going to got to rename the team? Just don't do a Golden Knights kind of thing. That name bothers me.
Yeah.
The Golden Knights. I'm like, eh, boy.
I mean, where else could they go though? I mean, who else? Like,
I don't
maybe in
know.
like
I don't know.
maybe Portland, or I mean, it's gonna
Portland, Portland. Okay.
Memphis. Maybe Memphis would
Oh,
be
all right. All
that
right.
might be
You
a good
think?
place.
Yeah, but where's the real hotbed? I really don't know. I should probably look into it. I don't know where they're pining to have a Major League Baseball team outside of Montreal.
Right.
So
I
I
just
guess it
I
would make sense. It's the only one we can even think of. So like I said, romantically, it makes sense. Will it work long term? I don't know.
I mean, as somebody who lives in the Tampa Bay area, I will tell you that the Trop is in a crappy neighborhood.
Okay.
It is not at all convenient to get to.
Okay.
And I mean, that's will I maybe go to a Rays game or two when they're at Steinbrenner? Probably.
Hmm. Right.
Um, but and number one, they don't have a plan to fix the Trop. That worries me. And number two, I mean, they've had this new stadium on the drawing board for years, and it still hasn't gone anywhere. And I think they're committed to 3 more years after this year to the city of St. Petersburg at the Trop, which would be, which would work out if they built a new stadium. Maybe take them 2 or 3 years to do it, but I don't see
Right.
anything moving, is what I'm saying. And it kind of, I mean, and the people here do not care. The only time you get a nice crowd at the Trop for a game is, guess who's in town?
The Yankees.
Bingo.
Right.
I mean,
You know
otherwise
what?
it's pretty. It's yeah,
The city itself may not be three-team necessary. To be very honest, you have the Lightning. They're in hockey, they're firmly entrenched and successful.
yeah. The same huge fan base is
They've
the Bucks.
they've got multiple. Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tampa Bay Lightning are they're fine. But baseball's never really, in my mind, been fully embraced in Tampa Bay anyway.
No,
You
it
know,
has not. I mean, and there's, I mean, there's too many alternatives. I mean, a guy like me, I get up on a Sunday morning and I will drive to the park in Clearwater to watch the Phillies minor league team,
right?
and I can get in for like $7. They have a great Philly cheesesteak, and they have a little craft bar called McGillicuddy's,
Mm-hmm.
and I can have a nice day of it for like 20-25 bucks. You can't do that, watching a race game, even at
Right.
Steinbrenner. I'm sure they're going to charge major league prices. You're talking about a day at the ballpark is going to be between the parking, a ticket, and some food. You're probably talking a $1.50.
And getting back to the three-team thing, if you really look at it, only the major cities are cities that can really sustain and pull that off. Like New York, for example, we've got all four, correct?
Right.
We've got all four. Philadelphia, what do they got? They got the Phillies, they got the Flyers, they got the 76ers. It's big city aspirations, and that gets back to my point. Is Tampa Bay really one of those cities, like a
No, I mean, even
Boston?
a city like a
You know,
Kansas City only has baseball and football. They don't
right,
have a basketball team. They don't have a hockey team. St. Louis
right,
has baseball and hockey.
right,
They don't, right? I
right,
mean,
right. If you're in Los Angeles, yeah, you're going to have a bunch of teams. If you're in New York, yeah, you're going to have Philadelphia, Boston, Chicago. Chicago's got all four.
right.
You
But you're
know,
like you're
but
you're a Milwaukee, or a
right. So
Houston.
so Tampa Bay to me is perfectly fine. I think the citizens of Tampa Bay that love sports are perfectly fine with the
Yeah,
Bucks and the Lightning. They're fine with it. They don't want anything else. They've clearly shown it over the years. They're not that interested in Tampa Bay Rays. They're just not.
no,
And I don't think Tampa Bay, the city itself, is a three-team city, is what I'm getting at. Now, interesting, tying it all back into Vegas. Vegas thinks big, right? It's Vegas. So they've got the Raiders, they've got the Golden Knights. They might be able to pull this off. So it does make sense. Honestly, if I'm thinking as a Rays owner, he's probably going to get more money from Vegas than to go to Montreal anyway.
Yeah,
And I can see Vegas rebranding them or doing whatever, and it might work.
and
So
yeah, and there's money out
it
there.
might work, right? And there is money over there, so Vegas can possibly join the 3 or 4 team type city club, and there is such a thing. you know,
I do not see him staying. I don't see them here long term. I just don't. I never
no,
have.
no,
I mean, for years, I thought like, one of these guys going to move. Nobody comes to support them, even when they're
right,
playing well.
right. Right. I
And
always
they,
hope for the day that the Hartford Whalers come back, to get tying it into the Expos thing. Remember the Hartford Whalers, the hockey team
oh
that played
hell
in
yeah,
Connecticut?
yep.
I mean, to me, it's sad that they're gone. I kind of was fond of them. A lot of people are, by the way, oddly enough.
Didn't Gordie Howe play for them for a bit?
He did, yeah, and his son too, who's in the Hall of
Right,
Fame. Nobody ever
Mark
talks
and
about his
Marty,
son.
right?
Yeah,
With
yeah.
sons.
Nobody ever talks about Mark. Mark was unbelievable. The House son, he's in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah,
But yeah, it's a romantic thing, and you'd love to see it happen. But what's the long term thing? I still
right.
think if they brought back the Hartford Whalers, it would be successful in today's landscape. I think
Why
they'd do
not?
fine in
Why not?
Connecticut. They'd make money.
Yep. No, I hear you. Well, Jimmy, doing this show with you reminds me of how much I have missed doing baseball with you. I hope you feel the same.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice to be able to talk baseball again. What do you think the Yankees are going to do this year? Let's go. Let's because we're gonna try to be a little current if we can. As far as further coverage and stuff like that. So, what do you think the Yankees can do this year? Now that
Um,
it's opening day, what's your aspirations? What's your expectations?
I'm going to say with the the fact that Stanton with his yeast infection. Uh,
We're back to that.
yeah.
By the way, it's so frustrating being a fan of Stanton's.
I've never seen a professional athlete injured as often as this guy is.
It bothers me too because, and I've always said this, and I think he's proven it. In crunch time, he's good.
He's
You
he,
want you
yeah, when
want
he's
him.
healthy, he's a great ball player. Just
No,
can't
I'm
stay
talking
healthy.
about when it's really counted, like the playoffs and stuff.
Right, he's clutch.
I'm
He is. He's clutch.
I'm. It's so frustrating to not have him around more and to not be sure if he's going to be there when it counts most. It's just like, damn it. It's so frustrating being a fan of Stanton's, and I'm not a
I'm
fan
gonna.
of Stanton's, by the way. I'm a fan of Don Mattingly or Reggie or
Okay.
Thurman or
Yeah.
But to root for Stanton is very frustrating because he's a Yankee after all. But half the team is in the hospital. It's like, what's going on
Right.
here?
Yeah. I'm gonna say 89 and 73. They get a wild
Ew,
card, and they.
ew, really, really,
You think too low?
wow, that bad, huh?
Yeah.
Man.
I mean, we make the playoffs.
Okay, okay. Well, let me put it this way. This is why I'm very cautious to put a number on it, but I'm going to have to because I started this all. This is my fault. Last year's Yankee team, I did not expect them to get to the World Series.
No.
Okay. I did not think that there was enough going on there. Most of the batting averages were horrendous. There was no Ron Guidry. There was no Andy Pettit type. There was no Roger Clemens type. There was no CC Sabathia type. I mean, Garrett, maybe. Garrett is definitely in the conversation with these sorts of names, but he hasn't done it yet. So I was kind of surprised, as far as winning a ring. I was kind of surprised that they got that far. I was bewildered, actually, a little bit. Um, I think that they can be good again. I don't know how good though. I don't think they could be like 100-win team. Let's get real.
No.
89 seems like, and you think they could get a wild card with that spot? Is the American League really that weak, or is that fashionable to say the American League is just that weak because the Yankees showed up in the World Series and played like shit? I don't buy that. I don't think that it's necessarily that. We could have a turnaround out of nowhere. When was the last dynasty anyway? Major League Baseball. Right now, yes, the doors go through Los Angeles, but are they a dynasty? I ain't ready to
No,
call
not
them that
yet.
yet.
We're
You
not.
know what I
We're way
mean?
too soon for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, there's been plenty of turnaround, whether it's an American League champ or a National League champ. Plenty of turnaround. So, yeah, it could turn around. It could be the Yankees or someone else from the American League could stomp the Dodgers or somebody else. You never know. I'm going to say the Yankees could win 92, 93 games if all things go right and make the playoffs. I don't
93 and
feel
69.
comfortable. I
Yeah.
don't feel comfortable with 89 wins. I don't feel like that would be enough to know for sure. I do not want to be biting my nails on the last game of the season because if I am, I don't expect shit from this team. Right
Right.
now, right now, I don't expect shit from this team. Just to be honest, we Soto is gone. I like who we replaced with. I think we got a little deeper, but losing Cole takes away from we got deeper. It was such a terrible thing to lose Garrett Cole. It's enormous losing your best pitcher,
Yeah, I'm
your
feeling good.
stud.
I'm feeling good if we have Cole.
Yeah, no, I'm feeling very good if we have Cole because then you push everybody back a slot, and now all you're really worrying about is the 4 and the 5 for the most part. The 3 are completely, entrenched. It changed everything. You have the closer. It's very frustrating, and Stanton too. If we go in with Cole and Stanton, we can't play the what if game though. This is what we're
Yeah,
looking at. But last year's team didn't impress me, and they got to the World Series. So
they definitely overachieved, right?
I think they did. Yeah, I think they did. And Boone totally blew the whole thing as far as momentum right away in
Right.
Game 1. So it's just that was horrendous. I mean, do you think getting back to Steinbrenner? Do you think that Aaron survives the off season
No,
after the Game 1 he had?
no, no.
Exactly.
He's gone.
Yeah, Mattingly would have been a manager if George had been alive. You know that, right?
Oh,
You
absolutely.
you do
I
know that,
I would love to
right?
see Don Mattingly back in a Yankee
That's
uniform.
100%. By the way, I'm not just like throwing a theory out there. That would have happened. George
Right.
Steinbrenner was absolutely going to have Don Mattingly as his manager at some point if he had been lived longer. But
Yeah.
yeah.
We will see, my
Cashman and
friend.
Hal are very safe. They're bean
Yep.
counters. I do give them credit. They did go out and try to do things to round out the lineup, but they left some gaping holes that made me scratch my head. Who DJ LeMahieu? I mean, yeah, of course he's hurt. I don't want to hear about him playing third base. Benny, he hasn't been relevant in like 5 seasons. You realize that,
No,
right?
he
DJ.
had a couple of good seasons in the beginning, and yeah, he's been persona non grata for a couple of years now.
That's the part of Cashman that drives the diehard Yankee fans the most crazy. Is that he won't admit when he's wrong. And that's the one thing that really drives Yankee fans nuts. Because sometimes we get stuck with these guys and he just doesn't want to admit that should just eat the contract and move the fuck on. I don't want to be looking at DJ LeMahieu every year. I've been tired of him 3 or 4 seasons ago. Why
Yeah,
is
and
he
he
still on?
and he's not getting any younger either.
Right. Remember the Ellsbury contract? It's like what every year we get the tease that he might come back and he would come back for what, like a week come on, stop already.
Right. Yeah. Cut
Just cut.
cut bait.
Didn't we have the Cole Pavano experience? What was that, like 4 years of that or
Oh,
whatever? It's like,
jeez.
dude, it's like
There's a
Brian.
name I forgot about.
Yeah. And then Cashman gets to the World Series last year, and it's like, what are we going to say? It's so annoying. It's like, oh, God. I suppose he thinks that just getting to the World Series now is good enough. No, it's not. We're the Yankees. You got to win
No.
it.
Yeah,
You
tell
know?
that to George Steinbrenner. Yeah, we made it to the
Yeah.
series. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Steinbrenner, guys like Verlander, before they got to the Astros, guys like him would have been Yankees. You know what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
He would have grabbed Justin Verlander before the Astros could, or he would have spent more to make sure he gets him before the Astros could. That's what George was in another level of
Yep.
aggressiveness.
Another one that there'll only be one of.
Right. That's all
Oh
right. We
well.
still got a Hal.
Yep.
Well, it's been great to bring the band back together, the two-piece band.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you want to take us home, my friend?
You've been watching the Baseball Bums. I'm not a bum. You're a bum.
Yeah.
Until next time.
I look like a bum. I'll take it.
Yeah. Later.
Later.